Okay, welcome to showcase number 98. I believe it was 97, but that was text-based, so I'm going to consider this one 98, officially at least. We have a bunch of stuff to go over today. I'm going to warn you ahead of time that it's relatively slow going visually, but next showcase should be considerably better as a result of this one. We do have some visual elements, like the new tiles. I don't think I've shown off the house tile sets or the bridge tile sets, and those aren't complete yet. We still have a ton of stuff to do with those, and I finally ordered a bunch of assets that I think will get us up to par with what we need for the beta launch, but we'll see about that. I'm almost certain it's, very close to being everything we need. And as soon as that's in, all the current tile sets will be at least finished if we aren't, up to par, if nothing else. So we have a new inventory system, which again is kind of the slow going part, and a new config system, colliders, again the tile sets I showed off, and all of this is playing into chests, saving inventories, markets, housing systems, which I'm calling the residence system. The bridge obviously is going to be a thing that I walk over for fun. Equipment systems, etc., all coming next showcase, as well as a ton of new assets, including new monsters, new equipment, I think, as well, some new spell art, some new spell stuff in general, new housing tile sets, obviously, new props, etc. So, hope you enjoy. It shouldn't be too bad, even though it is a little slow, so have a good day. So one of the things I've been working on recently is a redesign of the existing inventory system. It sounds probably pretty fancy or technical, but I promise you I won't go too in-depth on the details there. It's not really that big a deal, and frankly it's not even that much of a complicated thing, but I feel like it's something I should communicate with you guys anyway because it's very important going forward, not just for me, but for the game, and for a variety of different things like saving inventories and chests and markets and etc. So I'm going to go over that briefly. Essentially, previously we had a kind of outdated system. It was one of the first-ish systems I made. I'm talking about the inventory and item system, of course. And again, I'm not going to go too in-depth on the detail or the technical side of things, but essentially the players are the only things with an inventory attached to them, and the items, say you pick up an item, that item tells the player basically how to put itself in their inventory, right? Which is sort of backwards, and of course, again, that was one of the first systems I made. I wasn't really very experienced, so that's one of the things I fixed. Now it's a completely different system, of course, and more than that, we also have the potential to connect these inventories to different things. So previously, like I said, we had it so that every player had an inventory attached to them, but there weren't other inventories, right? It was just attached to the player and nothing else. So it was solely this little guy on the screen, and everyone else, they had their own inventory per player. Now we have a list of inventories and a list of owners, right? So this guy on the screen might own the 5th inventory in the game, right? So we just keep track of who owns what, and then we update them when that inventory gets a new item, or loses an item, or deletes an item, or swaps 2 items' positions in the inventory, etc. And that's much cleaner and much easier to use and utilize than my previous system. One of the important things about this is that because it's so much easier to utilize, I can bug fix it quite a lot easier. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up some of these apples around here to demonstrate this, and I've already picked up quite a few, as you can see. This is a small bug that still exists. This slot number here that sits above the apples, because we have 12 apples, gets offset by resizing the window. So when you open it, it moves to the left, and then when you move it in the actual menu, it goes back to its correct position. So that's just a thing we'll have to fix in the future. It's kind of a minor bug, but whatever the case. What I wanted to talk about specifically was how much cleaner this is, and it probably doesn't seem much cleaner to you guys, I suppose, but it genuinely really is. It's much easier to bug fix, it's much easier to resolve. Apologize for that, I keep double clicking by accident, but regardless, it is just a much simpler, easier to use system than the mess I had prior. And again, no harm, no foul to myself, but it was kind of annoying to use, so it was deserving of a redesign. And if we drop this real quick, you can see it drops on the ground like the previous items would. Same exact functionality there, except it's just easier all the way through. And one of the things I wanted to show off that's a little more visual, and I think frankly relatively cool, it's a quality of life feature. Currently, you can right-click an item to drop one of it if it has a stack. If it's not stacked, then it'll drop all of it if it's just a single thing like a weapon or something like that. And of course, like I showed, you can just drag it out of your inventory and it will drop all of them on the ground, right? pretty straightforward, usual stuff, right? But you want a kind of specific way to get a lot of numbers fast, right? And in the future, we're going to have a more specific, I guess more specific than this method of doing so, like for instance a text box where you can enter an amount to drop. It's not really that complicated, just not really something I think we need right now. But regardless, the current method I've implemented is basically a hold function, I guess you could say. So I'm going to hold down the right click button, and you can see it accelerates, and it's still a little wonky. I need to adjust the acceleration, but that drops all of the items with relative speed. So if you have something like 100 coins or something, you can drop all of them relatively easily without dropping, I guess, all of them, right? So I should say you can drop most of them if you chose, right? So you might have 900 coins, and you can easily get to 800 without needing to drop, 900 and then split them up and then right-click 100 times or whatever else, right? So you can just hold this down and get to wherever you need to go, and it'll reset every time you click it. So if I pick these up again, you can see that when we first start right-clicking it, it's very slow, and if we do that again, it's very slow, and again, it's very slow. So obviously the point of this is fairly straightforward. I don't think it's that complicated, but I do think it's a very needed thing, and we might adjust that in the future with a config file, which is again something I'm going to be showing off in just a second here. But regardless, I think that that's everything for the inventory for right now. Also, if you were worried about this, I'm going to hold down for a second here. It does have a pretty significant delay on it, so there's really no chance of you double clicking it by accident, or rather you right clicking for just long enough to drop 2 instead of 1. I was very vigilant about that for whatever reason. It's kind of a strange thing to be vigilant about, but regardless, that's that, and that's a thing. I think that that's everything for the inventory. It's, again, the most complicated thing you're going to be seeing today or hearing about today, but still, I think it's fairly important that you guys understand how that works and understand that it's a thing. Like I said, it's way easier to use, but not just that, it's also it has way more potential than the previous system. The previous system was very difficult to save because of how it worked, so it was very difficult to save everything to file, and that was why I hadn't done it yet. And this system allows that to basically save in spades, if that's a phrase I can use. Any inventory can be saved to file as just a JSON data file with extreme ease, and in addition to that, we can save it and tie it to what's called a display object ID. So if we have a chest in the world, we can tie it to that chest's ID or a player's ID or their account name or whatever else, so when they log back in, they'll immediately have access to that inventory again. And of course, that's a really important thing because you want to save progress naturally. Regardless, I think that we're okay for this segment. We're going to move on to the new tiles, collision, housing, config files, and I think that's everything in just a second here. So look forward to that. Again, apologize for such a complicated, or I guess quote-unquote complicated thing at the beginning of the showcase, but I felt like it was, again, pretty necessary. I hope you enjoy. Next up, we have config options, and this is something that was a long time coming. I'm going to go ahead and point out that we do have new hotbar icons too. I don't know if you guys care. I think we had some of them previously, but they weren't all filled in, so now we have, again, all of them. But whatever the case, we're going to be focusing on specifically config options today, and I'm just going to go ahead and click that. It's not a big deal. So this is a very basic menu for right now, but frankly, it's a config menu. Do we really need a more advanced thing for right now? I don't think we do. But anyway, a bunch of options here. You can see they're all turned on by default, and that's intended. You can toggle basically everything that you would want to toggle for right now, I think. There was a suggestion to toggle FX, like access, FX, but I don't think that that's super necessary right now. We don't really have any extremely painful, CPU killing spells currently, so I don't think that'll be something we need, at least for the foreseeable future, but regardless, we're just going to talk about the ones we do have for right now. You can see in the chat up here, I've been testing some of this, but the first is, of course, screen shake. Screen shake is just necessary. I understand this is an industry standard for not just AAA games, but I mean, every single game with screen shake, you need a screen shake option. Otherwise, there are inevitably going to be 20% of your population that vomit profusely at the sight of your game. So that's obviously an option. You can click any of these, and they automatically change the config options, of course. view OC. This is pretty self-explanatory. I don't think it's actually turned on right now. I'm fairly certain. No, okay, so yeah. So it does change the config option, but the config option doesn't currently mute your viewing of OOC, so that's just a thing in the future. The ones I've been working on specifically are view pickups, so if I have this turned off, when I pick up this apple over here, it will not show a message, of course. And these sensors also, I thought this was a pretty good idea because there's always the question of, what do you censor and what do you prevent from being set in OOC and what is against the rules and what is not, and so on and so forth. So I just have two options. You can hit censor curses, so if I try to say, I don't know, fuck in OOC, then that'll censor that, and if I turn it off and I type it, same thing. And this is not if you have it on when you type, this is you viewing it. So if there was a second person online right now, obviously I can't double log in, but if there was a second person online right now typing in OC and I had censor curses off, they could be typing it all they want and also have it on their end, and they wouldn't see it, but I would, right? It would be censored on their end, but it wouldn't be on mine. So this is completely client-side. The server itself sees all of what you post. It is unfortunately witness to everything. However, you are allowed to make up your own mind, I guess, depending on, if you're 8 or if you're 16. Of course, censor slurs is a little higher on this list, and I'm not going to be demonstrating that today for very, very clear, obvious reasons. But that is pretty self-explanatory. So you can choose between censoring curses, which are very basic stuff, just adult things like, fuck, ass, damn, and so on. If you, for some reason, don't want to see those in OC, not a big deal. I am not going to make the decision myself to mute that or censor that altogether from everyone, because obviously some people don't care, or a lot of people don't care, and some people do. So again, that's why this is a config option. Censor slurs, though, is a much higher, higher definition issue, and I feel like this is probably the best way to handle it. This includes literally just any slur. So I consider the N-word or the F-word, the other F-word, etc., all of this stuff to be a slur, even if you yourself use it, blah, blah, blah. All that usual commentary, I'm not going to participate in it. I'm just going to say, if you don't want to see it, you don't have to see it. And if you're using it excessively, or you're using it offensively or whatever, even with the censors, then it'll probably be a problem. But regardless, you can just opt to not see it, and that's your own deal. That's your bag. So, in addition to this, I will say, just in advance, that if someone is going out of their way to avoid the censor, so if they are, making attempts to dodge it by exchanging letters with numbers or something like that, then it will be considered, some sort of mute or offensive action, basically. So you might be muted or temporarily banned or kicked or whatever else the consequences decided at the time. It's not really something I'm going to be laying down the law on right now, but just so you know, in the future, if you are attempting to avoid that constantly, then, that's that. In the future, I might also make some sort of engine to detect that, but that'll be a side project. Regardless, I think that's everything for config options. We're mostly finished on that. And of course there's like 1 or 2 or 3 things left, but that'll be for another time. You'll notice up here these tiles are missing, and that's actually relatively exciting, even if it does seem like just a random bug. It's related to one of the most exciting systems I've made recently, or in recent times, so stay tuned for that. That'll be the clip after this one. I hope you enjoy. Alright, so final clip today for the in-game stuff. We're talking about housing right now, and what that means is we're talking about this guy over here. So I know that housing is a thing in a lot of different games, and of course it's a thing in, I believe, Naruto. I don't think it's as prominent there, but Spires and E3 most recently, and any MMO really, Final Fantasy or whatever, the Black Desert Online, that one. Even in WoW, things like that. It's really popular in MMOs, right? You want to have housing because it's just something fun. You can customize your own room, your own dorm, whatever it is, and it's very entertaining, in my opinion. So that was a must-have for me, and I also figured out that it wouldn't be that difficult, actually. So what we've done here is, you're not going to be able to, it's not anything super special yet. We can't actually go into the house just yet, but I wanted to demonstrate the actual housing tiles themselves because I think they're really pretty. You will notice that the roof is a little awkward, I think. I think that the roof could be improved. Currently, it's only horizontal, as in it only goes across and then down. But I actually recently, 2 days ago or so, purchased an order from the guy that makes all of our tile sets to have a vertical roofing tile set as well. So that way we can have it merged together and have these dynamic, intricate housing networks and all that stuff. So that'll be cool when it gets here. I think currently it is a little awkward, but we're working on fixing that. Whatever the case, the thing itself I think is really nice. The tile variations and the cracks are really cool, and these windows are also really cool. The reason that these tiles are disappearing is a side effect of something I've been doing with Windows. So in addition to the doors opening, of course, when you walk inside, there's no warper here or even collision currently. But in the future, when you walk up and enter the warper, it'll open the door correspondingly. But also, I was hoping to, during the daytime, cause these windows to be this color, of course, so they're darkened, and then at night have them illuminate depending on the percentage of darkness currently applied to the map. So as you get further and further into the night, the lights or the windows will light up more and more, just to show that it's present there, and I think that that would be a very cute, nice little thing, especially because it's not even that much of an expensive process either. So it wouldn't be something that lags the server or anything like that. It's very flavorful and fluffy. Anyway, the reason that these tiles aren't here is because it's misdiagnosing, I guess you could say, the housing tiles themselves as windows and giving them an icon state that doesn't exist. So that's just a weird thing that's not going to be here next time. Anyway, the reason I wanted to talk about housing was because I've been really recently, I guess, working on collision and a bunch of different collision-related things, and in that length, I've also been working on mapping and I guess more specifically on mapping the houses and then mapping doors to each room and each other map and each apartment and so on and so forth. And you can see here, previously in other iterations of Verdict, I guess, we didn't have collision. There was just no collision. And if I go too far south here, you're going to start to see I'm going to pull back the curtain a little bit here because obviously I haven't mapped out all of this. It's just a kind of sheer cliff. But anyway, there wasn't collision before, and actually there was collision, but you could walk through corners. It was literally one directional, so this up here, this flat bar here, it would allow you to walk off to the left, and that was obviously not that realistic, so I've gone through and fixed that, and now it's a much more dynamic system that has 2 layers, with a visual and a structural component to, I guess, each layer. And that's fancy speak for there's a solid layer that each visual layer tile has, a collision respecting component applied to, if that makes sense. It's kind of a string of long words, but in layman's terms, there's a visual side with the cliffs, and that's what you see, and then each cliff has like an invisible wall applied to it that you can't walk through. It's, just that simple. So that's what you're seeing here, and that's why you can't walk through this corner like you could previously. And frankly, these are pretty smooth. I'm very happy with these. It never snags. No matter what pattern you have, it really doesn't ever catch you off, and there's no overlap or anything like that. So very happy with how that turned out, and it works very well. And that was sort of a precursor to housing, because of course you don't want to walk through the walls of your apartment, so I wanted to fix that up before I worked on the housing itself, and of course that's working. So next up is, for next showcase, going to be the housing interiors and being able to rent houses and purchase houses for coin and all that stuff, which again, the inventory system was sort of a precursor to that, because I wanted to have chests in your apartments, and I wanted you to be able to automatically draw coins from your inventory to put into your house, and so on and so forth. So my plan for that, just to give you guys another very brief look behind the curtain, is to have a inventory attached to your room's door, and that inventory will routinely demand a certain amount of coins, and you'll be able to just drag that amount of coins onto the door. That simple. It probably sounds sort of awkward. It needs some polishing and some refurbishing, but I still think it's a pretty cool idea, and I think that it's a little more immersive than any sort of UI element that I could devise. So I'm very happy with that idea so far, and what I've got going for that. Regardless, I think that we're good for today. it was a little slow going in terms of everything going on visually, but I think important stuff regardless happened, and I've been working my ass off coding a metric ass load of of new systems and rewritten systems and all that good stuff. So next time I should have functional housing for you guys, as well as a huge amount of assets. The base animations are within probably one email of completion, I would say. The housing tile set, and I guess all tile sets altogether, I'm getting a ton of new props like urns and crates and a couple new crafting station kind of things, new door types, roof types. Like I said, there's a vertical roof type that's coming in, some new windows, new housing tile sets in general, some interiors, castle extensions, so much stuff. It was actually ending up more in count total than this asset pack that I got from the same artist. The housing, the last asset request, I guess you could say. But anyway, in addition to that, like I said, base animations are almost done. That's coming, and I'm also getting a bunch of new monsters spreaded, some critters too. So look forward to that. Tons of new stuff coming. I'm really excited for it. I'm very hype about that kind of stuff. So stay tuned, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Have a good day. Bye.